this is being broadcast live on the city's channel too. So I'll do my best, Pat Sajak, and welcome everybody to the council chambers of City Hall or Citizens Tower in Lubbock, Texas. Got a great group here tonight to talk about this past bond election and get feedback from our citizenry on, as it said in the email or in the e-blast, where do we go from here? Because I think all of y'all agree, even though it was defeated and our citizens spoke, those needs aren't going away. So where do we go from here? And I just really do appreciate everybody that's, this is a great representation, and I appreciate it very much. I had them do this graphic, and this is out of the plan book for 2040, which I thought is kind of might set the tone of where maybe some of the conversation will go. And the most important part of that is the last, the boldface, is that the overall goal of economic development is to utilize public expenditures in a way that facilitates productive private response. And I think that's what this bond package would have done, is there would have been some, ancillary and some definitely benefits from the private sector once this is in place. So I'll change the slide. I hope I do it right. Where do we go from here? But one of the things I'd like to do is just spend a few minutes on time is how did we get here? Because I've had a number of emails of asking me, how did we get to that 13 group that was in this package right here? Well, it really started about a year and a half ago, if my memory served me, somewhere in that time, when Councilman Griffith, he chaired a subcommittee. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. He's standing in the back. Whoa. Where we became his road scholars. And Councilman Griffin, how many miles, we drove in about 3 days' time, we drove almost every street and road in town. Isn't that correct? We had a huge list. If you remember, go ahead. Maybe 70%. 70? Okay. But we knew a lot about the others because we'd been tracking them before. So your committee then, we put together, and I was on that committee, we put a list of streets and roads that needed work. And do you remember the total number, but it was a bunch. It was a lot. And we even put dollar amounts to each one of those, if I remember right. Is that right, Wood? Where is Wood? He's right there. He was our chauffeur part of the time. And we put dollar amounts to it. And then we kept knocking it down and for, eliminating streets and such. And then that went to the Future Needs Committee. Isn't that correct? And that's where this came from. Is that correct? So I just wanted to let explain that to some people. And a lot of y'all, I'm preaching to the choir, you know how that works. But I had a couple emails of how did you get to that? So there was a lot of process. So we lost the election. As I said, where do we go from here because the needs don't go away? But I felt bad about not doing, I feel, my part to help communicate what was going on or what this package was all about. Because if some of you know that was my career, my 30-plus year career, as I was in advertising, marketing, communications, and we obviously failed, in my opinion. And I'm only talking to myself, failing to communicate. Probably maybe a lot better than what we did on this bond package. But I had our CFO run some numbers, as if we were to take this same bond package and we wait till November to do it. I got it right on the board because I asked them to do the board, so I've got it right on the board. I won't belabor this if it doesn't work this time. It could cost us as much as $6.7 million in interest from what we have now as far as our our bonds and the ratings so I thought that was significant. The other thing when I was talking to Wood that I thought was significant too, that in probably 2023, well, this is a supply chain deal that everybody's having a problem with. Wood told me right now you have one bidder for asphalt right now. And you usually have at least three. So supplies are going to be maybe scarce. We hope not in 2023. And when I think we'll see more action on Loop 88. And then I think the county's got some stuff that you're going to start pretty soon, maybe before 2023, but it'll probably lapse into that. But then he made an interesting thing on our great win with Leprino Foods, that their specs for asphalt is pretty astronomical, and concrete too, for that construction project. So the fact is that even if we had 3 more bidders for asphalt, there's going to be 8 more people that are asking for bids from them. So in regards to the street part, and let's talk about this right now. We've got the Broadway part of this discussion, and we got the street side of this discussion. And in my opinion, I think the street side of the discussion is safety, stay ahead of growth, economic development, and I like the idea that, like we did this year, we had an extra bill. We had extra $2 million from property tax because of new properties that were put on the rolls, and that was pretty nice too. So let's think about the roads part of this. Problems, concerns, additions, subtractions, and everybody, that's the reason I had everybody have one of these. I'd like to open up the floor for discussion on the street side of this bond package, the non-Broadway part of this package. What you think, does it make sense? Are there additions that we should do? Is there subtractions that we do? Because I want to hear from you so that when and if this comes up again, the bond package comes up again, it probably should look somewhat different than the one that we have on this flyer tonight. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yes, sir. Would you come up to the mic, please, sorry, so they can, since this is live?
All right, I'm sorry. All right. I sent you an email a day or so after this election and explained what my thought process was. In looking at the streets, first blush, I think they're needed. 114th needs to be widened. Avenue P needs to be done. 82nd, 34th from Q to Avenue A needs to be blown up. That is one of the worst streets in the world. So I think the street portion, excluding Broadway, is good to go. That was my turnoff on all the stuff that we were trying to do with Broadway, the Broadway edition, whatever you're calling it. And I really don't have a problem with the restoration of the brick part of it. You know, I work over here at Broadway, on Broadway, 1400 block. Probably going to be there another 4 or 5 years. So I think Broadway needs to be done because it does jar your teeth. You know, Paul Beam made a comment on the news one night that he doesn't see how Lance Armstrong could ride down there in bicycles. And Paul, I've seen folks riding bicycles, by the way. I'll say my piece. Thank you. Randy.
Thank you. Who up next? There's got to be some comments about that portion of. Please come to the mic when you do talk, please.
Randy, number one, just to say how much we appreciate you guys taking time to hear from us. Appreciate staff. There's a lot of city staff people here. Appreciate that too. I understand being on council is a full-time job, not an easy job. And so for us as just citizens to have an opportunity to visit with you and share ideas and options, I'd like to say thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
The comments that I had been told about the bond election was, and not to throw rocks at anybody, but just to analyze what happened, was the fact that you guys worked really hard on it. You put some numbers together. Some of those numbers exceeded what maybe some people thought some projects should cost. But maybe if we'd had a little more education, and maybe if everything hadn't been rolled up into one ball. There are streets, as you know, you've driven them, south part of city, southwest part of city. I live in 79424. I understand 114th is in the budget. That will happen, probably headed out for bidding here pretty quick. But to take all of the concept of road construction that we need, which a couple of years ago was we're about $150 million behind on street constructions, more than that now. But to roll it up into one ball, I think might have led some people to reach a conclusion that yes, we need streets in certain locations, but I feel like that we're holding up some of the streets that we really, really need in South Lubbock and Southwest Lubbock, kind of holding them hostage over Broadway. And I'm not being negative in any way. Broadway is an expensive price tag. I understand Broadway may have been, estimates on Broadway may have been for full brick pavers for the whole
Curb and
project. Curb and gutter, and maybe to tone that expense down, that could be done different ways, either with some concrete paving and maybe brick in either in the bike lanes or pedestrian lanes for foot traffic, or maybe even some banding out of brick at intersections, just look at different options how to reduce that cost. But all in all, we essentially have subdivisions right now, and I am a developer and a builder.
But you almost, why don't you identify yourself, because you're also in planning and zoning, which
I am planning and zoning. I was there for
people to know.
Dan Wilson. I was on P&Z for about 10 years. Also a member of CPOC committee. I was a member of Lubbock 2040. I was a member of that commission. And so, but we have so many streets that need attention, because essentially we have brand new subdivisions, and as you know, Lubbock is very robust with construction. A lot of construction happening, and people literally are going home driving down old 2-lane county paved roads with no shoulders, trying to get to new subdivision. And so we are behind. That is not, I'm not going to say that's an oddity, because it's not. When a municipality grows at the rate that we've been growing, it's easy as a municipality to run out of funds. Lubbock 2040 plan, we came up with the idea of impact fees. That was adopted by the city, and those are going into effect. And so new subdivisions, we'll see that cost added, and so the funding from impact fees will find its way to the city to help pay for infrastructure cost. At this point, mainly streets. However, it's going to be a small percentage compared to what we really need as a city. I would advocate to break the bond up, break the items up, and so the most essential, hopefully then the most essential projects, the cream will rise to the top and be approved. And that would be my suggestion. One other thought that I've had, and I'm full of ideas and half of them are not good.
Join the club.
When we're in a situation, and I understand it's Lubbock funds, it's Lubbock streets, Lubbock right away. However, when we're in a situation where a developer is developing on one side of a thoroughfare, another developer is on the other side of the thoroughfare, what if we kind of got out of the box a little bit? What if the developers were given the opportunity, while they're paving their streets, to actually pave to midline on the thoroughfare? Understanding the plans would be drawn, approved by Lubbock city engineers, inspected by Lubbock inspectors, but I'm an advocate for the belief that our square yardage cost would significantly go down.
Really? That's interesting.
And so I'm just throwing that out for conversation. When the work is already being done, just on the other side of that right-of-way, the same contractors that are going to bid your city work are already working for me in that subdivision. And if I can simply bring them to midline of that thoroughfare, I believe it's a significant savings to the city. I'd throw that out for conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your work, your volunteerism too. Anybody else? Yes, sir. George?
And I'll echo what Dan said. Thank y'all for your service, and thanks to everybody that's here tonight and away from their families to be here for this meeting. But I'm like agreed with Dan and the other first speaker that had y'all broken this down, I think it would have passed. I think the general roads all over town would have probably passed 60-40, because I think we all realize that there's so many needs and so much. And I sent y'all an email during early voting that I had voted for your bond election, but very reluctantly, because I was very skeptical about Broadway and that cost, and that y'all left off a couple of streets that were really important, because y'all didn't include 34th from Milwaukee to Upland. And the guys that developed Milwaukee Ridge have actually paid some prepaid paving back in 20, 25 years ago. That money's probably gone with the breeze by now. And the Elliots that did all the apartments on the north side, they paid to put in all that curb, but nothing's been done to 34th. And that's a dangerous two-lane county road, former county road, with deep bar ditches in places. And it's dangerous. And as Dan said, there's subdivisions out there and apartments and people and a lot of traffic, and it's not a good situation. And y'all didn't include Quaker from 146 to Woodrow Road, and Cooper's building a new high school on that corner at Woodrow Road. Mm-hmm. And that road is a two-lane dirt road that has a water hole that completely gets it impassable. And when they get that school built, it's not going to be a good situation, because access from south to north can be, it's just not. So y'all need to do that. In my development career of about 25 years, I've done 4 subdivisions, maybe 1,000 lots, plus a lot of commercial property. I worked with the city on Milwaukee, and all of us developers paid our part of putting Milwaukee through. I have not spent $40 million in my career on paving. And to think of the Broadway portion being $40 million is excessive. And y'all didn't do a good job of selling it.
Nope.
Because it would have been 60-40 for the other roads, 40-60 in my opinion.
Are you sure it wouldn't be 75-25?
Sir?
You sure it wouldn't be 75-25?
It's possible. Against it, yeah, it's very possible. But that Broadway cost just seems so excessive. But y'all didn't tell us what it was going to be. And I've lived in Lubbock a long time, and I've watched our votes over the years, and the Lubbock electorate gets it right most of the time. And we got this one right. There was too much indefinite information on Broadway. And, of course, I'm an advocate, and I've told you this, and I've told Jeff this. We need to get rid of all the bricks in downtown Lubbock and pave it with asphalt.
You're a no-bricker.
And I know that, and y'all have a vocal minority that disagree.
Well, we have our brickers too, so y'all kind of balance.
Yeah. Well, I always say if there's 30 or 40 people down here fussing about something, there's 269,960 that aren't. So I think the majority of people would prefer to get rid of the bricks, because, as somebody just said, they're rough as a cob. And the thing that Wood did there by the Federal Building to get rid of that big dip there, that was wonderful. That was amazing, because that thing was dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, Linda take her car to Alderson to get it worked on and have to slow down and make a right turn to get through that thing, you know. But at any rate,
my car threw itself in reverse when I started.
But if y'all had explained that Broadway thing better and included more information and cut the cost down, it might have passed. But I would really encourage y'all to bring at least the rest of the roads back. And I know y'all had said after that election that there was a limit, you couldn't do it for some years, but maybe if you added some roads to it and changed the thing up, maybe you could bring it back. I think the voters...
We could bring it back, but it has to be on official election days to do what, if we were to do similar to what we did in November.
Well, I really think the majority of people in Lubbock really wanted to get all those other roads done, because y'all had them spread out all over town. Nobody was getting favoritism.
They did a great job.
It was a good job of picking the roads that needed to be done. They were all over, East Lubbock, South Lubbock, North, West, everywhere that needed to be done. And you need to add those other two. And as I told y'all in my email, I have no financial interest in either of those two streets. I'm just a citizen that sees something that needs to be done. But anyway, I hope y'all can figure out a way to do that because, as Dan said, as Lubbock keeps growing, you know, when I was involved in the Milwaukee project, that was not even a turn road through my property.
No.
And when friends of mine knew that I was involved in that, the common comments were, George, it is so smart of the city to get ahead of development and do this street before all the businesses and houses are there. That's, to my knowledge, in the 59 years I've lived here, that's the only project that's ever been done ahead of development. Tom Martin was brilliant in engineering that. Him and Mark McDougall were the brains behind that, and it was beautiful. And everything else we're doing, we're playing catch-up. And this bond election that failed is catch-up. Every bit of that's catch-up. It all needed to be done many, many years ago, as Dan said. So I hope you can figure out a way to do it. And I think y'all would get good support. Now, I also heard that there was a faction of people that didn't like y'all because of some of y'all's votes back in the summer that voted against it just to be mean. I hope that's not true. It's just something I heard. I don't know for sure, but at any rate, I think most people in Lubbock would vote for a modified version and leave Broadway out, and then do it separately and explain it much better. Get a lot more education of what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and I think the people might support that if they knew what you all are really going to do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, George. Good thoughts. Anybody else have a comment about well, we kind of wondered over, that's okay, but the street side of it, but go wherever you want to go with it. Sir.
Good evening, Councilman. I just want to say as well, thank you for having this town hall and for allowing for this conversation. My name is Nicholas Bergfeld. I work in sustainable economic development policy, and I just want to voice support for what Dan and George said when it came to the streets component. I really think it was a very even distribution across the city, and I do think that that's something that citizens across the city would have voted for if they had the opportunity to. I do also want to voice support for the redevelopment of Broadway. I don't want to put my hat in the brick or the non-brick side, but I'm very much so about the numbers, and so in my mind, I would think about what would be the most cost-effective way of redeveloping Broadway. We know that there are a lot of development styles that could increase the value of properties along the Broadway corridor and along downtown if Broadway were to be revitalized and redeveloped as more of an urban corridor. Now, you can use different styles of pavement to achieve that, and so for me, I would want it to be the most cost-effective that there is. Ultimately, I think as you look across the various roads and the cost of them, I think about it from a public ledger standpoint. And out of all of the roads that we would consider, Broadway actually has the strongest economic argument out of any of the roads as being the one that needs to be repaired. And the reason for that is because it's highly likely that the city of Lubbock will recoup the costs of the development of Broadway through essentially property tax valuations rising up as a result of that area becoming more desirable. So even in the event of Broadway not being included, bundled together with the others, I would strongly encourage allowing the citizens to still vote on that project and trying to make more forceful arguments as to why there's such high value for redeveloping Broadway. I think some of the feedback that I've gotten from folks on the Broadway component is that a lot of sort of working class folks in the city don't see themselves downtown. And they don't see what the value of Broadway could be for them. They think it's somewhere where bankers and lawyers spend most of their time. And similarly, they had resistance to the idea of the downtown park for similar reasons. You know, what exactly is this component? You know, where are these dollars going? Why isn't it something coming to my community? And I think expressing how the benefits of having a highly active urban corridor is to the benefit of all of us, that the amenities, the restaurants, the entertainment. I was really excited to see Nukes open up in the McDougall Towers building. You know, those are the types of things that are really going to attract people to want to spend time downtown. And I think it really is just about the marketing aspect, as you mentioned. And so, yes, I think that without Broadway, I feel like the bond election would have passed. But I also want to say that from an economic standpoint, I think the Broadway component is one of the elements that we really need, especially when it comes to the overall value and impact that it could have on redevelopment for downtown overall. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
I want to reiterate, thank you so much for what the council's done and the time that's been put into this. I know this is a full-time, part-time, full-time job to do this over and over again. Nicholas, you hit the nail on the head. I think this is, from an economic perspective, if that's how we analyze this and what these places bring to town. George and Dan both pointed out, I mean, all of these roads, I'm in real estate here in town. My name's Dan Williams. And from an economic perspective, including Broadway was a very important piece of the development of what needs to happen. What's different and what people don't get is this is a density conversation. When you talk about downtown and you talk about Metro Tower is going to add almost 200 people inside of, a quarter of a block. And that's how many people are going to be added inside of that building. And there's going to be 2,000 students from South Plains College going into the former City Hall on a daily basis. So you talk about the use of that street, and it's probably going to be used and utilized more than a lot of these streets are that are outside in the suburban areas of town. And I get when people say, like, I don't go downtown, so it doesn't affect me. But we have to be of a mind for the city. Every street on here is important. It doesn't matter if it's, multi-million-dollar homes or, $30,000 apartment units that we're adding. But when you look at what the economic impact of what has happened in downtown, and you see in the last couple years that we have well over, Mont can help me with some numbers probably, but, I think right now we have over $80 million in renovation projects in downtown. And before that, the year before was over 200 million. So when you look at these numbers and we make decisions based off of that, like we say, oh, well, this subdivision added 150 homes. Well, we've added more than that on a smaller area in downtown because of density. And I think we really have to look at the economic impact. And I think, one of the things I am a part of the downtown TIF, and so one of the things we approved was the master plan for downtown, and it had a hybrid approach. And I think that the hybrid approach, which has some brick that, and give me your phrase that you say about honoring our past.
Oh.
If you want to throw that out there,
Honor
that's
the past.
Yeah,
Embrace the present and welcome the future.
Yeah, and that's what the hybrid approach does to me. It allows us to honor the past and create an importance for downtown, because downtown is something that is for everybody in the city. It is a place that shows the vibrance of a city. When you have a downtown that you just leave and you let it continue to deteriorate, that's when this gets abandoned. And we have so much momentum with what downtown is. I personally advocate that we continue to push into this, because I hope my kids, we come down here every Saturday, we eat at the Pancake House, we go to the Tornado Memorial, and that's part of our Saturday tradition. And part of getting you look at the density of what Overton is, and how many people are in Overton, how many students are there, and how many houses. And when you go up 4 stories versus just single stories everywhere, it's just a different conversation. And I think, from the council's perspective, I think that's part of the things that educating people, we need to make sure they know these things, because that is, that was one of the largest projects, private development projects in the country when that was done in Overton. And so you just have a lot of people in a smaller space. And so, yes, it is expensive to do Broadway, and yes, it's expensive to pay tribute to what it was, but I think we need to do something to figure that out. And it needs to be part of this package. I think like we've said multiple times, all of this is important. There's no question that part of what, you know, and I think that's where people got confused in like, oh, we're throwing in downtown just with all these other things so it'll get passed. But no, we're throwing in downtown because downtown's important, and Broadway is a big part of the tax rolls and what these buildings are going to be, and how many people are going to be on them. And if people knew all of the housing projects that are going on in downtown, the Kimmel Center, the Tech grad student housing, the Metro Tower, all of these projects are going to do great things for Lubbock, and they're going to keep students here after they graduate. And that's really big. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I
thank you.
appreciate your work too. Okay, let's just switch gears and let's talk. Well, let me back up. Would y'all agree that for the most part, y'all don't have a problem with the streets and roads portion of the bond package? Just shake your, nod your head. For the most part, you're okay with that. I'm not going to have you, make a commitment, but that's what it sounds like to me. So let's go to Broadway. I'm kind of like these guys that were talking a minute ago. If you look at what Broadway is not a street in Southwest Lubbock. Broadway and the streets that are in the bond package, or the street part of the bond package, have, in my opinion, have very different functions. And I just thought about that just recently, but they really do. But for the argument's sake, let's divide Broadway into a East Broadway and a West Broadway. This is University, so that's Q, and over here is the end. This is Avenue E. And I broke them up that way for a very specific reason, is that, as you see, I don't know if it's in your handout or not, but it's in this book. This is the book that the Overland Group did. This is the Downtown Redevelopment Master Plan book. And they didn't advocate splitting them up, but they did advocate ending them at E. And they also recommended a hybrid. So I just want to open up discussion with Broadway. What should we do? How do we need to take care of it? Your suggestions. I just want to hear from you. Just open it up for comments right now, if you would. I'd appreciate the comments. If you'd come to the mic, please.
I've actually managed businesses on Broadway on 2 separate occasions, so I'm very familiar with it, even though it was over 25 years ago when I did. How much of the TIF fund can be dedicated towards this, if not all of it? And why wouldn't Broadway be a priority over other things like the park? That's a question. The downtown park that's there. Why wouldn't Broadway be a priority with the TIF funds?
I guess that's something they could consider.
Okay.
They're pretty
And
autonomous.
I've seen various other travels and stuff, and one thing we ought to look at as far as the way to do it. Now, I've seen part of the hybrid. I don't necessarily agree with how they do that. Probably the best one I've seen is the way Provo, Utah has theirs, where it's just the intersections and part of the sidewalk has that, and it's really nice, and it looks like it's very easily maintained compared to what we have now. And I just wonder why we can't reallocate some of our money and not necessarily have it go to bonds, because we don't necessarily have all of that money, because we keep was 174 million is what the bond was.
Yeah,
and was there a bond committee to begin with? Now, I've been on a bond committee before for 34th Street. Did we have one this last time?
I believe all we had is our subcommittee. I don't remember a
Why
bond.
didn't we have
it wasn't a-
citizens,
Huh?
Councilman? Both of y'all can answer.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't mean to be accusatory here. I'm just questioning. I know both you gentlemen real well. No, I mean, I know I admire both of you guys a lot. I mean, I hope you know that.
I actually take a hell of a lot, not a whole lot, a hell why this failed, because I was the chairman of the committee. So honestly, I owe everybody in this room an apology that we didn't communicate well from the council level. And it's been brought up several different times already about our lack of communication.
Well, I would've been
So
glad
I
to sell you
apologize
gentlemen
for
some
that.
advertising, I know that.
You can do
How
that well.
self-serving of you, I mean, goodness.
But the bottom line is, the council selected, this was, as Randy mentioned earlier, this started out of our street subcommittee. And where it went was our corridors. We took care of a lot of the streets, the unpaved streets, without citizen approval, to the tune of $9 million. That work is underway, started underway already. So yes, the council voted to do some of the unpaved streets. We voted also, because of a public safety component, to do where we have a new patrol substation, I should say, and a fire station, northwest side, Frankfurt on Erskine, all the way from Frankfurt to Milwaukee, because of the public safety. We should have never built the fire station on a 2-lane road. We've done that before. We learned our lesson. George helped us out of the last time we did that on 66. But the bottom line is, we felt like we had done our work and the data was there. Did we, and that's what I appreciate Councilman Christian having this event, to determine where we failed. And it's real interesting that everybody's talking about Broadway, because Broadway was the football. It was the football of this bond election, in my opinion. But, so it's very interesting to drill down on that and see where you go, because we've never solved Broadway. Let's be honest, in decades, the need's still there. Regardless if you do it hybrid, what sections, the need's still there. It's still a rough ride.
Broadway's been a mess, I can tell you, since, I started managing stores on there, in the early 80s. And, it's been a problem that's not been addressed.
Yes, and so we felt like we'd done our work. Obviously, we did not communicate very well, and it was extremely wide open as to what product that would look like. And I'll be the first to admit, I was for all brick personally, because we had, in studying this, the all brick cost, if you think about it, those bricks have been down there since 1920, a lot of them. The very first bond of money that the city ever borrowed, 1920, was to do 8 blocks of brick streets downtown. So a lot of it's not a perfect deal. We'll be the first to take blame on this. We did not communicate well. But the subcommittee, we felt like we'd done our work. As we studied this over a year, we had on this dais many discussions, many different council meetings. Ms. Patterson-Harris is nodding her head yes, she remembers. We discussed this over and over and over. As you remember, because of your participation in a previous bond committee,
Sure.
a council
That
can
was
only,
broke, though,
a
in that
council
bond
can't
election.
advocate, we can give data, we can't go promote.
No, but before there have been different groups that have come up that are able to go out and promote it and do
Yes.
advertising and be an advocate for it where the 3 councilmen people here obviously couldn't.
Thank you
I
for
mean, I
explaining
understood
that.
But also on that previous bond committee, the road bonds were broken apart. 34th was separate from everything else. And I think that the way 34th was sold as being a corridor and being necessary for business, Broadway could have been done the same way, but I think the overall opinion of a lot of people that I talked with, and I'm sure there's many of them here, that it's just, I think there was kind of enough is enough, because there were certain high-ticket items that in the past hadn't been voted on and brought to the citizens. And I think the fact that there wasn't a citizens bond committee, that's something else. There's a lot of different citizens committees that have happened in the past that all of a sudden have seemed to drop from the wayside. That, I participated, I know Michael has, I'm sure other people in this room have, that, there's still many of us that are willing to participate on some of these committees that just all of a sudden seem to have disappeared. That's a trend not only with the city, but at the LISD and other entities. The county did, county's done the same thing. But I think that there's, where the elected officials think, oh, we know better than a group of citizens, when that's not necessarily true. So.
Thank you. One more comment I'd like to make, because this isn't my meeting. I'm actually here to listen. Excuse me, Randy.
No, fine.
Here comes Michael, thank you.
Oh.
But to save me.
Since he's talking about me,
Were you
mic.
finished? Make sure he wouldn't. Are you? You want to finish any comments?
I'm not very big.
Is that?
Let's hear Ms. Ward speak.
Okay.
I wrestled with this at the very beginning, and I came down here and spoke at the afternoon hearing on August 4th, as did Barley Owen, and I pretty much had come to the conclusion that it was too big a package. The 3 previous bond elections at their inception without interest in 99, 2004, and 2009, all totaled, all 3 of them, was a little under 118 million. So 175 was pretty excessive, and there had been an excessive use of COs and a lot of high-paid outside consultants. I mean, a lot of things factored into people looking at this, not just me, because I had very little way to even have input. A letter that I had sent to the AJ, they picked out a couple of paragraphs out of it and printed it 2 days after the election, which the timing was a little off. But anyway, I guess I wanted to also just touch on the overreaction has bothered me. I'm not part of a territorial secret tribe somewhere and all of this stuff. And I've kind of jokingly said that some of the reaction has been a little like teenagers that had maxed out their credit card and their allowances, and they were complaining because the parents wouldn't give them some more. So I think most people have dealt with that kind of thing. But there have been a lot of things, and a lot more people have been paying attention in the last year or so. I've been monitoring the city for close to 40 years, but it was important to know that. And the fact that it wasn't really, I don't think it was a lack of information on your part or any of your parts. It was that some of it wasn't quite believable. The $8.38 cost for $150,000 homes just didn't click. And with the $28 million that you had borrowed, it was going to be 3 1/3 cents, not 2. Like, I mean, there was some kind of difference in the whole picture. And then the other thing that I was very concerned about, and I think everybody else was, and I was quite stunned really, when I had an updated list of all of the debt service on the all the different departments and how far out they are. With interest, our debt, and there's good debt and there's bad debt and all this, but we still have to pay it all out of our same pocketbook at home. But it is just shy of $2 billion. And that has been a huge increase over the last few years, and I think a lot of it is because of a lot of COs. And, of course, this past legislature put a cap on quite a bit of it. There were some exceptions, and I think streets were one of them. But it was sort of incomplete information, if you will. And I did wrestle with it because I think all the other projects were important. But I think the concentration, if you will, obsession with downtown has led a lot of people to say, why this much emphasis on that over other areas? And I mean, I could go on and on, but I think that's an important piece of it. And a lot of us would be willing to try to figure out a way to do some of these things. But when we have that much debt, it's hard. You're kind of against a rock and a hard place because it's going to take us a while to pay it down. I know things roll off, but our LP&L debt is out to 2056 when I'll be long gone from this planet for quite a few years. But it's just, those are just some thoughts. I had a lot of things written down, but I don't want to be mean and hateful on any of this because I always try to be constructive as much as possible. But it wasn't, I didn't reach that many people, and I was really surprised that almost 55% of the voters that decided to go vote were against it. And in your district particularly, not that it was all territorial, but it was over. Not a single precinct in District 5 voted for it even slightly. I'm sure you've looked at the same things that I've analyzed, but I just wanted to sort of share those kinds of things with us because basically it's just, and the other part was that by being all together in one package, even if people trusted you all completely to do what you say you'll do, you can't bind the next council from rearranging it. And of course, some people were still remembering back, and I know all the facts on it, but in the 2004 bond election, $5 million that was designated for fixing up the auditorium because it was in the same category, and it was broken out into sections, but it was used on the Civic Center. So there's, within a bond package, it can be rearranged. It wasn't that you were going to spend it all on Broadway, but there was no way that anybody could keep it from happening if it did. And I think that's another factor in this, but.
That will always be the case, correct?
I'm sorry, what?
That will always be the case.
It will be.
The next council could.
Well, and of course you were talking about the difference between May and November, but even the scheduling that you all were doing is like for 5 years. So no matter what, it's going to not be, all the bonds would not have been sold at the same time. And so you're going to run into increased construction cost and interest and everything else from those kinds of things. But
I think you would agree with regardless of you put it off too far into the future, it's going to cost more.
Sure, and I know that. I just don't know how to solve it with as much debt as we have right now. And I guess you could just, well, you can't sell COs for, 2 or 3 years now on these same exact things. But, I mean, even this building should have been sent to the voters. It's not something you had that much to do with it, but there's a lot of things that factor into why people are concerned, and it's not all, we're not all.
And let me ask you a question, if you don't
Sure.
mind. What I'm hearing you say, though, is the street and part of it, the non-Broadway part of it, you don't have a lot of disagreement with those.
No, it just, and maybe we waited too long to have one. Ken and I were both
That's
on the
true.
Bond Oversight Committee for '09, and it went absolutely perfect. Marcia Reed was able to do the engineering, and we took 34th Street further than had even been planned to do. So, and there's maybe some other things. I think somebody mentioned at one of the council meetings since on the work sessions that have gone on these, that there might be a way to not do concrete, like a complete redo of 34th Street, but do something that would still be durable and not be full of potholes. Because I think both ends of that need to be something done. But everything doesn't have to be done to the degree that maybe we were putting in this. But I think a smaller bond election would be a lot more palatable to a lot of people.
As I understand what you're talking about on 34th Street, that I would definitely categorize what we would do with not that, now that we don't have the bond, is it a patch job.
Well,
I really would
or
categorize it.
remilling something. There
Oh,
was a
it would be
discussion
better than
about
it is now, but that's the reality
Right.
of where that would go.
I mean, concrete is wonderful, but it's
Well, I
very
don't know.
expensive to
I'll have to get
repair.
back to you on the concrete. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
But I know it would be
Sounds
quite a
good. I
step
didn't
down
wanna
from what the bond
monopolize,
package
but I just
had.
wanted to kind of explain because I kind of come from that cautious, a little bit more fiscally aware of things. And I just think there were some things, like I said, I don't think it was a lack of information so much as it didn't really fly because of other people's opinions about maybe other things as well. But I'm glad that people are focusing more on the city because I think it's healthy. And in the past, sometimes when I would talk about something, they'd just roll their eyes and say, that can't be going on, and just walk off.
Yeah.
But I think there are people that are starting to notice, and it's more of the other spending that's been done without voter approval, I think, that factored into a lot of that too. So anyway, I didn't want to monopolize, but
No.
I
Your
kinda
your
come
comments
from
are always
a little
comments
different
are always welcome.
perspective, but I'm always wanting to be helpful as much as possible. So I do appreciate it, Randy.
My name's Cindy Martin, and I get
Whoa! She dropped the mic.
trying to move it up just so you can hear me. Okay. Let me,
Yeah. Here you go.
okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
My name's Cindy Martin, and I do want to speak in favor of brick streets on Broadway. I have a history background, and actually I have a history with those brick streets. I was at the Southwest Collection in the early in the 1980s when they were looking at rebricking Broadway and taking out. Some of you may not have been here when Broadway was so lovely with asphalt down the middle, and so when we looked at rebricking it, they were having trouble doing the first block or so. And I actually have the film of how to,
How cool.
the film that came from the Thurber Brick Company on how to build a vitrified brick street. And so we brought it down and showed it to the engineers and everything. It was kind of fun. But that said, Broadway has always been the corridor that joins the town and gown, you know, that join Texas Tech and downtown. And some of the comments that I won't go through the whole thing, but just to chime in and say ditto on what has already been said about the importance of downtown is an economic importance. I mean, I love the history of it, but I've been, worked downtown for 15 years. My husband had a business down here for 30, and we'd seen some grim times. We were down on Avenue K when there were weeds this high down here where this building is right now. So it hasn't always been lovely down here, and, there's been places where the streets are bad. But the underlayment of these streets is 100 years old. And I think if you figure out the cost of these brick streets over the cost of the street in front of your house right now, these streets are probably been the best deal Lubbock's ever had. But they've just not been maintained. When someone came in and did, had to dig up for work on the streets, they, wasn't maintained properly or something, and it's just, time to redo them. We have a lot of brick streets. We probably can't afford to redo all of them, but the Texas Historical Commission and other entities all over the country have done economic analyses and found that maintaining a strong downtown is good, not just for for the people who live here, but it brings people in. We've got people who come in for Texas Tech. He was talking about South Plains. There's a lot of people. If you haven't been, you don't hang around downtown a lot, you have no idea how many people live down here. There are a lot of people downtown right now. And with the Arts District and some of the consultants commented on, went to First Friday Art Trail and commented on that these are local people that are out, and it's just fabulous to see all of that. And with the Depot District. And when companies are talking about looking at places to go, Lubbock is, has looks much better to a company coming in if they've got amenities like that, and if you've got a vibrant districts like that we have to offer, rather than decaying or dying downtown. There's a lot going on right now. There's tons of development, lots of new restaurants, and a lot going on. And so just to reiterate what they said, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of people here that need the support. I mean, obviously, the new developments in Southwest Lubbock need support, but, you know, so do the people that are working and living right down here. I, of course, love the all brick streets. Just one comment about the communication. I was shocked after the election to see on, you know, the little Nextdoor app, you know,
Oh, yeah.
people in, that there was actually a conversation where a number of people, and I don't know how widespread this was, but I was shocked to see that there were at least a number of them out there. They were having a conversation saying, I voted no, I saved the brick streets.
Uh-huh.
And that the conversation was that they had seen this and didn't like it
Okay.
and thought, oh, they're gonna destroy our brick streets because if I vote for this, this is what's gonna happen to Broadway. And so we all voted no on the proposal. So I was left scratching my head going, well, there's people on all kinds of sides that voting no. And then there was another group of people who said, I wasn't opposed to brick down Broadway, but I was opposed to the pedestrian crossover or something. And
Yeah,
so they were opposed to that. And so that was why, you know, one of the main reasons they were going to vote no. So again, I do think communication, you know, was an issue in terms of the Broadway component of that and figuring out, you know, what are we doing and how do we communicate that to people and sell that. And I agree. I think people that don't live and work down here or don't come to events, you know, don't go to the Cactus or don't come to restaurants down here, don't understand and don't see all the people who live and work down here and don't understand all of the development that's going on, because there is a lot happening. Drive up and down here if you haven't driven the streets downtown lately. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Christian, I'm gonna have to step out, but I just wanted to make sure that we are giving the full illustration with regards to Broadway, that the proposal was not that it ended at Avenue 8, because of those folks who participated in our comp plan. It said that we would create a pathway, a corridor, if you will, from the university to the lakes. So I just wanted to make sure, I'm gonna have to leave. Hey, thanks for everybody being here, glad to see you. But I wanted to make sure that in the discussion, that we added and make sure we included the whole shebang when we were talking about it. Thank you.
Mr. Bean? He's quicker. He was a little quicker this time.
My name is Paul Bean. I live at 7912 Joliet, and I did not kill the street bond vote. Neither did Michael Ward or Burley Owen or anybody else. One of the issues that clearly defeated the street bond vote was Broadway. It killed the street bond vote deader than Julius Caesar. And until we can work a plan that can get these streets fixed in a quick manner, Broadway is going to continue to be an anchor around any bond vote on the streets. I was at my home one day prior to the bond vote, and a TV crew showed up, and they wanted an interview. And I gave them an interview, and in that interview, I said there was many, many street projects in Lubbock that needed to be done. But I was openly opposed to spending $40+ million on Broadway. I find it strange that we talk a lot about Broadway, but nothing one block north on Main. If you drive on Main Street, it's smooth as that floor over there. Almost all the way to Avenue Q. Why? It's got asphalt on it. And I know we have a lot of folks that are wrapped up in the history of Lubbock, and I understand that, and I can appreciate it. But if you come back with another bond issue on Broadway with brick streets, it's going to get beat. because it's just too much money. You know, Broadway, if you'll do a traffic count, it's not one of the heavily trafficked streets in Lubbock. In fact, let's face it, most hours of the day, you can shoot a shotgun down Broadway and not crack a windshield. And I would like to take an opportunity, and I'm sorry that George left, George McMahon, who has been a major force in this city. He's done a lot of good. I tend to disagree about one thing that he said, and I wish he were here. But he indicated that a lot of people voted no on the bond issue because of some of the previous votes that the council had taken. And I don't believe that the 100 or so yard signs that I bought and paid for and put my name on that said vote no on the bond issue, I don't think that had any impact at all on the bond vote getting beat. What I do think had an impact on the bond vote getting beat is previous actions by the council and previous councils before you. Because I talk to a lot of people almost on a daily basis, and they tell me that at this point in time, and this is tough to say, there's just not a lot of trust right now in elected officials. And we see that not only on the city council level, but we see it at all levels of government. And I hate that because I know from personal experience that being a Lubbock City Councilman is a full-time job, and it's a hard job that you need to do every day, 7 days a week, because the work never ends. And it's really a tough job, and I applaud you, Randy, for coming down here and listening to the folks to talk about this street bond issue. But until we shuck Broadway off of this ballot, it's not going to pass. And it's not going to pass because of several other reasons. ERCOT. The general public is terrified of ERCOT. They read about the blackouts, they read about the brownouts, they read about the people dying in the big freeze of this past year, and they're scared to death. There's a lot of people. I've not met one person who's in favor of a $10 million downtown city park. No one, not a single one. I know a person who owns property right across the street, and he's not in favor for it. And he's in this audience tonight. There's other issues. The abortion vote. And I know that's a really, really sensitive issue. But by voting unanimously against it, you sent a lot of people, hundreds of people, out doing thousands of hours of work collecting signatures in order to pass a successful election. There's a cause and effect for everything. And I just feel like, as I've watched city politics for 50 years, I feel like in the past 8 or 9 months, there's been a loss of confidence in our current city council. I hope that that can come back. And I believe it will come back. And I certainly hope it does. And Randy, I appreciate you taking time tonight, and I appreciate all these people showing up. Thank you.
Could I ask you one question?
Yes.
So am I hearing you right, too, that the basic, are the streets that's on the street side of this bond election, the 12, not the 13th one, this is Broadway, those are worthy projects?
Certainly they are, and I said so on television. And I also bought and paid for the signs that said vote no. After I put them up, I was amused to see a signs that showed up that said vote for. They didn't have anybody's name on them. I'm not sure who bought them.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to clarify that those other
Absolutely.
12.
And I said so publicly.
Oh, I know you have.
And I'll say so again. They're in desperate need. 114th Street, it's just a accident waiting for a place to happen.
Then what should we? And I'm not wanting to pick on you, Paul, but you've been a city councilman before. So what should we do with Broadway?
Well, I'd start with a traffic count. A former athletic director at Texas Tech asked me, he said, we need to hire a football coach. He said, what's your suggestion? I said, make a list of the 50 best coaches in the country and start at number 1, and when he says no, mark him off and go to number 2. Same thing with traffic count. Do a traffic count on these streets, find out how much traffic are they carrying, and that's the sole judgment for the priority of the project. I don't know, it may seem a simple explanation to traffic engineers and the people in the business, but very simple to me. If it's got more traffic, if A's got more traffic than B, you got to do A first.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Connie Goodwin, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the brick streets. I'm on the Heritage Society, and you know, there's a in most cities, in a lot of cities, you know, there's a big push for downtown cities to do well. There's even a deal called Main Street Cities that they help you regenerate downtowns. And we've talked to the city council several times about the brick streets. I think we were talking about how things had been presented, and maybe there was a lack of explaining to the city, you know, what these things entailed. And these brick streets have lasted 100 years. In Fort Worth, it was pointed out that they're just, brick streets are just great. And someone on our city council earlier said, well, you know, the brick streets are fine, we just have not kept up with them. They've been repaired badly, and so there's a problem with that. And so, you know, that's why it's like washboards and things like that. And but also, from a historical point of view, they're beautiful. And if you're going to do downtown, there's only 5 miles of brick streets in Lubbock. And so I just think if we explained a little bit more to people that brick streets last 100 years if they're kept up, more than that. Asphalt, I've just heard people talking about bad roads, and you know, that's asphalt. That's, you know, you have to keep doing that. You have to keep repairing that, potholes and everything else. You don't have to do that with brick streets. And so I think that we should look at the expense of that versus all of this repair, and think about that, because I do think that I agree. You know, you've separated it. The streets are incredibly important all over Lubbock, but downtown Lubbock is also going to be important. And I think we just need to look about it and inform Lubbock citizens about what brick streets would entail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it is 6:45, so if this would be the last speaker, we'll wrap this up and wrap this up. Yes, sir.
Councilman Christian, I think all of us here tonight thank you for having this town hall and letting the voice of the people be heard. It's becoming an endangered notion these days. I live at 2120 Broadway, and I've lived on Broadway most of my life, so I have a slightly different perspective than some folks. As I listen to people speak tonight, I'm reminded of a quote from William Shakespeare: "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." And I think it is an imperative for every thinking, caring individual to have self-reflection and examination about what have we done, why did we do it, and where do we go from here. I think Councilman Griffith said it very well the other day when he said, you may not like the results of the vote, but the people have spoken. And it did, as they spoke, and they spoke very decisively. And what I hear now is, well, perhaps the people spoke that way because there was a lack of communication. And I would submit to you that upon proper reflection, we might realize that we're dealing with a failed dream a flawed narrative. And that flawed narrative might be the obsession that has developed in our city leadership about revitalizing downtown and revitalizing it in a certain way by hiring multi-million-dollar consultants whose main expertise is building ghost cities in China. I mean, think about it. That's true. And I think the people, when finally given a chance to speak, not only did they speak very strongly on the right to life issue last May, but when given a chance to speak on the street bonds, they spoke very forcefully, no, we reject this vision. And while all of us want to see downtown do well, and I remember the real estate interest in the 70s who were rather gleeful that the city was picking up and moving out to the mall area. And that's a trend that continues to this day. And I would submit that perhaps that is a trend that cannot be countered, that the people once again are voting with their feet. They're moving things to 82nd Street, now 114th Street. And it could be that downtown is going to be very different from the dreams of the city leaders. You know, we all begin our lives with brave dreams. As a great philosopher said, life has a way of taking those dreams and stomping on them one by one as we get older. And we have to realize sometimes our dreams are flawed. And I would submit that many of us out there do not subscribe to the notion of a wealthy, upscale, downtown, you know, so beautifully represented by this picture over here, that the folks out on 82nd Street, 114th Street, 50th Street, wherever, might have a very different view. And I think that is the message, not failed communication, but failed narrative, that simply including Broadway in the bond issue was a bad idea. And if you do it again, it will have the same result. I think another philosopher said, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You know, you're going to get the same result because the people out there don't necessarily think the way the city leadership has thought. I think we have seen a great chasm develop between our current city council and our current city leaders and what the people out there want. What are they concerned with? One of their prime concerns is that Lubbock is approaching $2 billion of debt. $2 billion. Think about that, folks. That's more than some states have in debt. What's going to happen if inflation drives up interest rates? Have you considered that? That, you know, we're dealing with a debt that is financed in part by hidden fees on the LP&L bills. The average ratepayer in Lubbock pays close to $100 in extra fees, which are an addendum to the city budget, and some of that money is being diverted to this downtown fantasy, if you will. And so I think with proper reflection, it's time to say, hey, look, most of the streets on the bond issue, there was a consensus on it. They would have passed. If you'd left Broadway out of it, the bond issue in all likelihood would have passed. When you include Broadway, when you include a flawed dream and a failed narrative, you're going to get the same result. Leave Broadway out of it. Those of us who live on Broadway and love it, we watched enlightened city leaders in the 1980s do proper repairs to the middle lanes of West Broadway. We loved it, we applauded it, and that was an example of good city leadership polling their citizenry and doing the right thing. You can't impose views upon the citizenry because the citizenry will come around and bite you on it. So the thing is...
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. With that said, I appreciate everybody's input. I think we've got some work to do to continue answering that question, where do we go from here? But I've heard all of y'all, and I appreciate your comments, and those will certainly not be lost in future conversations, both publicly maybe we need to have another town hall meeting or once a month is fine with me. Just we'll have to have a little more robust snacks if they're at 5:30. If we could figure that one out. But anyway, thank y'all very much. Appreciate it very much, and y'all have a safe trip home. Thank you very much.